Welcome to today's live forum about the new State of Texas Assessment of Academic Readiness, or STAAR. This is our second live forum to answer your questions about the exam. We have already been through the first administration of the exam at the end of March, and you may have more questions than you did before. Don't worry, we're here to answer them. Bienvenidos a nuestro segundo foro en vivo para el examen estatal STAAR. Ya se llevó a cabo la primera tanda de exámenes a finales de marzo y puede ser que tengan más preguntas acerca del examen que antes. No se preocupen, estamos aquí para responderles. Before I introduce today's experts, I want to invite you to share your questions during the broadcast by calling 972-925-3123 or sending them to us from the online forum link found on www.dallasisd.org. You can send those questions in English or Spanish. Antes de presentar a los expertos, quiero recordarles que pueden hacer sus preguntas durante la transmisión del programa llamando al 972-925-3123 o mandando un correo electrónico a través de la forma que se encuentra en la página de internet del distrito en el www.dallasisd.org. Puede hacer sus preguntas en inglés o en español. Today's panel of experts about STAAR includes Vincent Reyes, Interim Division Executive for Teaching and Learning, Elizabeth Casas, Executive Director of Multi-Language Enrichment Program, Clarissa Blair, Director of Reading Language Arts, Cecilia Oakley, Executive Director of Evaluation and Testing, Stephanie Elizalde, Director of Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math, and Tanya Brown, Director of Curriculum and Instruction for Special Education, and Barbara Thomas, Director of Social Studies. We're going to start the program with a brief overview of STAAR and the changes students are seeing in the administration of the test. After that, we will answer questions that have been previously submitted and any questions that come in during the program. Vamos a comenzar el programa con una presentación acerca del STAAR y algunos de los cambios que se han implementado. Después responderemos a las preguntas que se han hecho antes y a las que ustedes hagan durante el programa. Aunque la presentación es en inglés, podrán ver la información en sus pantallas en inglés y en español. Mr. Reyes will now present the overview of STAAR.
Most students in the elementary and middle schools, and those who are in the 9th grade for the first time, took the first set of STAAR exams last month. Students who started high school in previous school years took the TAKS test and will continue to do so until they graduate. In the coming weeks, students in elementary and middle school will continue to take STAAR exams for the first time. Students who are in the 9th grade for the first time will take the math and science exams in May. For elementary and middle school students, the STAAR tests cover the same subjects that the TAKS did: reading, writing, math, science, and social studies. For high school students and middle school students taking classes for high school credit, the tests are much different than what they used to be. As you may already know, high school students will take 12 end-of-course exams in the areas of English, math, science, and social studies. There will be 3 separate exams in each of these areas, and students will take the exam for the subject they are learning in a particular year. For example, students who take biology will take the biology end-of-course exam that year, which will count as one of the science end-of-course exams. Students who take the world history class will take the end-of-course exam, that test, that subject. The reason that there are more exams with STAAR is that the new assessment is designed to measure how well students acquired the knowledge and skills that were taught in that particular year in that subject. Of course, this is not the only change students have experienced with the new STAAR. One of the biggest changes is that the STAAR exams are more rigorous than past standardized tests, which means that they will be more difficult. The reason that the exams are more difficult is that they will measure better how well prepared our students are to meet the challenges of college, starting even at the 3rd grade level. In fact, we have some sample questions available on the STAAR page of our website, so students and parents can have an idea of the knowledge and skills that will be tested with STAAR. I want to encourage you to visit the site and browse through all the resources we have there. Another important change is that students no longer have all day to take each exam. The state has determined that students will have a 4-hour time limit for each exam. Again, this is the kind of change that will help prepare students for college because most of the exams that they will take, like the SAT or ACT, or even advanced placement tests, have a time limit. You may be wondering, how will the STAAR exams figure into determining whether a student is promoted to the following grade? The results of the STAAR exams will be only one of the factors used to determine grade promotion. We will also take into account the student's grades, the teacher's recommendation, and other criteria. There are still some details that the Texas Education Agency is resolving about what will be the passing scores for the test, and probably won't have a determination until after the tests are finished. That is why this year, schools will not be ranked by the TEA. They will retain the ranking they had this year for the 2012-2013 school year. Then the rankings of exemplary, recognized, academically acceptable, and unacceptable will disappear and will be replaced by other rankings yet to be determined. Students will have 3 levels of achievement: advanced, satisfactory, and unsatisfactory, depending on the results of the STAAR end of course test this year and the test of the spring of 2013 for the rest of the grades. As a parent of school-aged children myself, I realize that some of these changes can be daunting for us and for our children. But the Dallas ISD has been working diligently to prepare schools and students for these tests. Yes, it will be an adjustment because any change is, but we will continue to provide the support that our students need to succeed in the form of resources, additional tutoring, and special programs. In fact, the district is offering preparation workshops for 9th grade students for the end of course exams. The last one takes place on April 28th. The session will take place at North Dallas and Skyline High Schools and at Nolan Estes Plaza. We've had good results for the previous session, so I encourage you to get your children to attend. We also have tutorials in English and Spanish for some subjects on the district STAAR webpage. These sessions are a great resource, and we are looking forward to students taking advantage of the opportunity. I hope this brief overview has helped you understand the STAAR test a little better.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes, for explaining some of the changes our students will see with the new test. We have many questions that we have received already, so we're now going to move on to that portion of our program. Please don't forget to call us with questions at 972-925-3123. Our panel of experts will be answering these questions that will be asked in English or Spanish as they are submitted. Gracias, señor Reyes, por esta explicación. Y quiero recordarles a los padres que nos ven que mucha de esta información se puede encontrar en español en la página de STAAR del distrito, www.dallasisd.org/Spanish. También los quiero alentar a que nos llamen al 972-925-3123 con sus preguntas para que nuestros expertos puedan responder. Let's start with the questions. I think the first question that everybody wants to know is, why did the exam change? Why did the state feel a need to change from the TAKS to the STAAR? Cecilia?
The goal from the state is to get our state to be one of the top 10 states in the nation. And I believe the way they want to do this is to get it college aligned. So all the exams are going to be aligned with college exams like SAT, and so they're going to make sure that our high school students graduate ready to enter the college or the workforce college ready, and therefore they could enter and be prepared to start immediately. And after that, then they trickle it down to the 3rd grade according to their level, and then that means they're aligned for college ready.
And that college readiness, it means that they're, because when you think as a parent, my kid's in the 3rd grade, do they really need to be college ready in the 3rd grade? But you kind of have to start preparing them, right? I mean, it's not something that all of a sudden you get to high school and you pick up the skills and the knowledge. You have to build on them. Exactly,
and for you to graduate and as a senior college ready, it cannot all be in that senior level. It's always a gradual learning process, and you have to have the skills from when you're very young. You have to be pretty much on grade level, even in 1st grade, so that you can be successful in the next year and the next year. So our STAAR will always let you know that you are leaving ready to enter the next grade.
Great. And another question, that because it's a big change from well, past years, when kids had the whole day to take the exam, now there's a time limit. Why is this change so important? Why did the state feel that kids needed a time limit to finish the exam?
I think one of the reasons for the reading test is that previously with the text, the students were asked to do lots of strategies, underlining, circling, and not really thinking about the questions and the answers on the test. With the time limit, students don't have time to do all the underlining and circling and using those kinds of strategies. They have to read the passage, read the question, and then think about the answer and begin to infer to make some of those answer choices. So for that reason, the test, the time limit on the test was shortened so that students would not have to do that kind of use those kinds of strategies.
So, básicamente, para decirlo en español, porque creo que es un tema importante para todos los padres, que parte de la razón que se estableció un tiempo limitado es para que los estudiantes realmente se concentren en las destrezas y las habilidades que se requieren en esa materia y no pasen tanto tiempo haciendo diferentes estrategias y como que decía, delinear y hacer circulitos y eso.
Sí, es cierto. En este momento con el examen, los niños ya tienen que pensar y considerar cada pregunta, cada parte del texto que tienen que leer y luego responder a las preguntas sin hacer estas estrategias.
Okay, great. How do I know if my child will be receiving accommodations for dyslexia? She's in 3rd grade.
Okay. Students who receive dyslexia services can receive accommodations, and those are outlined in the student's 504 plan or in the ARD committee for the student, ARD committee meeting. So either the ARD committee meeting, the 504 meeting will determine that, and then that will be documented, and that's how we know which students will receive accommodations.
Mm-hmm. Los estudiantes que van a recibir cierta ayuda o ciertas consideraciones especiales porque tienen situaciones de aprendizaje que se han determinado previamente, las van a recibir si se han determinado previamente a través de los procesos que tienen las escuelas para determinar estas situaciones. Así que ya deben de saber los estudiantes, los maestros y los padres si van a recibirlos para dislexia y otras situaciones.
Yes. And those accommodations are always based on student need. So not all students who receive dyslexia services will receive the same kinds of accommodations.
Y toda esta ayuda y consideraciones especiales se determinan por las necesidades de aprendizaje que tiene cada estudiante. No es lo mismo para todos, sino es individualizado, which is better, right? I mean, that each student gets exactly what he or she needs.
Absolutely.
As opposed to a blanket.
We all learn differently, and as the students learn, we want to assess them in the same way.
Great. Can schools set their own schedule to take the test within a certain window? I know there's certain weeks that we're taking the test, but can each school determine, for example, if they're doing it in the morning or the afternoon, or which 4 hours of the day or is that determined by the district?
Now, we usually like them to start in the morning. They don't have to start right first thing. But if some students come late, or they want to be able to have those kids finish, and so if you start really late and those kids are not there, they don't have enough time to finish. Mm-hmm. So it is important that we pretty much start in the morning, but not necessarily true. We try to keep it somewhat consistent, and because of our previous years starting, and most of us will be starting all in the morning and finishing it up after lunch. Okay. They will probably stop for the lunch, which brings me to let you know that a lunch period does not count as towards the 4 hours. They will literally stop and mark the time and then continue with the time to complete the 4 hours, and lunch will not be a part of that 4 hours.
Okay. Y eso es creo que es información importante que tengan los padres, que la hora de la comida, aunque estén tomando el examen, van a poder tomar tiempo para la comida y no va a contar dentro de las 4 horas. Van a parar, van a marcar el tiempo, van a ir a comer y regresando van a retomar el tiempo que quede para el examen. Sí,
porque I guess they really don't get an hour, probably 30 minutos.
Sí, no va a ser la hora completa. Bueno, creo sí, son niños, comen rápido. Los he visto en la cafetería. Okay, my daughter is in 3rd grade and did not take the reading test last month, but her cousin in 5th grade did. Why this difference?
The state gave us a window for students to be able to take the test, and the students in 3rd grade have not been tested, but will be testing in this next administration.
One of the reasons the 5th grade took it earlier is because in the past and in the future, when we are incorporating our Student Success Initiative, those kids in grades 5, 8, and then 9th and 10th will have to pass the exam, and they will get three times opportunities to take the test, and usually the first one's a little bit earlier so that they can have the second one by the end of the school year, and a third opportunity in the summer. So 5th, 8th, but not 3rd grade.
Okay, great. This is from a call from Ramona Bailey, who's probably watching us. What is the academic recovery credit, and how does this relate to STAAR? I guess what we do with the reconnection centers and that kind of thing. That's correct.
The academic recovery credit, that figures in when a student fails a course. So if a student is taking let's say they're taking Algebra 1 and do not pass the course, that is separate from the student taking the end of course and not passing the end of course. So for that particular student in the courses that have an end of course, that student would have to take Algebra 1 for credit recovery, and they would also have to come to what we're going to call our end of course academies during the summer to get additional help to pass the end of course.
Would there be an instance perhaps that the student did not get the credit for the class but did pass the exam?
Sure, I'm sure there will be plenty of examples of that where a student for whatever reason does not do well in the course. There are several reasons that could happen. One of the key factors for students not doing well is that they don't turn in their homework. So they need to take care of business and turn in their homework. Another factor might be absenteeism. If they're absent more than the required amount of time, then they would not pass the course. And then we have some cases where students struggle with the course and show up for test day and just do absolutely wonderful on the test. So there could be several examples of that.
So that is something that we've looked at. It's very good. Will the scores be available before school is out at the end of May?
No, the scores, well, for STAAR 3 through 8, we will get a file of the items correct in May, but those will not have the passing standards and will not be released to the parents. But for EOC 9th grade, we will have it June 8th, which is just a few days after, and it'll probably the results will go out with the report card that they get in the mail, usually that the last report card.
Okay, and is that going to be just for this year, or is that going to be the process for the coming years, or do we not know yet how that's going to work?
I think we're going to get results sooner once they have the performance targets, so the grades 3 through 8 for sure will be coming still before end of school. I don't know if the EOC is going to come earlier. This right now is the earliest they can do it for some reason or another. Probably the reason is because we're testing in May, which is a little bit later than normal, and they do need that time to put all those reports together. So it could be that end of course still comes out in June, but the STAAR 3 through 8 hopefully still continue in May.
Okay, great. Entonces los resultados de STAAR para primaria y secundaria probablemente estarán listos antes de finales de mayo, antes de salir de la escuela, pero los resultados para preparatoria van a tardar más y posiblemente estarán listos en junio. Y los van a mandar junto con las boletas para, bueno, las boletas para las últimas 6 semanas.
Correct.
Okay. How are teachers preparing our students for STAAR?
You know, our teachers have been working all year long in increasing the rigor of their implementation of curriculum, focusing on the standards, because the standards are what are truly being assessed in STAAR and EOC, and the teachers have worked diligently. We've provided additional support through our support offices in making adjustments and revisions to curriculum planning guides. Teachers meet both with content departments as well as on campus. They have professional learning community meetings with their principals. They look at data, they create common assessments, we have district-wide assessments. So there's been a complete plan and program of a comprehensive approach to planning for this assessment for all our students.
Okay. And because in this exam there's not really time or place for strategies and that kind of thing, I mean, you're not really teaching for the test. You're teaching the knowledge, and the students have to prove that they have the knowledge, and that all ties with the college readiness, and it's a plan.
It really has been a design. The assessment was designed to link to post-secondary education, and so it's all been designed for the purposes of increasing that rigor so that students are adequately prepared, not just to enter college and the workforce, but also to be successful in that setting.
What will be the STAAR grading scale? Do we know that already, or is that something that's going to be determined after this first set of exams?
Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure.
We know that there's going to be certain levels, and we will have performance targets for our EOC 9th grade tests sometime this month from the state, but they have really not been set for the other grades, and will not be set until probably January of 2013. So we will not know, we will just have data as to how many items correct they got, but we will not know what that translates to until the state tells us for grades 3 through 8.
And that is why we're not going to have any rankings this year. Or,
Exactly.
I mean, it's all
Exactly.
still being figured out.
Yes.
Are the same things being taught this year than last year when we were taking the tax? I mean, has that changed?
Well, for social studies, it has changed because we have new state standards. And because our standards changed, and we had to go back and redevelop our curriculum to show the depth and the rigor that the state is asking in our new standards. So in some cases, yes, but for the most part, no. We're not teaching the same things that we taught last year for tax.
Okay.
And in some areas, if I could also add or extend to that, one of the changes in STAAR is a focus on the content for that particular grade level and content area. So an example, 9th grade math tax was a combination. The assessment had 8th grade content as well as Algebra 1 on it. This year, when you're in Algebra 1 in 9th grade, it is 100% Algebra 1. So in many instances, there are some differences because we obviously made those adjustments, and there should be a tighter alignment of what I'm teaching in the classroom, if I'm a classroom teacher, to what students are going to be assessed on.
I'm sure students are glad to hear that, because sometimes it's, you know, if there's so much knowledge, it's kind of hard to take the test. So this should be, even though the test is more difficult,
It's more rigorous.
it's more focused, and that should be
Correct.
should be better for the students.
Correct.
Okay.
I think in reading, we're testing the same kinds of things, just testing them in a different way. Students have always had the opportunity, for example, to learn drama, to read drama, and to read poetry, but this time it's a place that's going to be assessed. In the writing, for example, students have had to write a composition for tax, but now in some cases they have to write 2 or 3 compositions. So it's not that we're testing something something new because students always have to write. It's just being tested in a different way.
I think that's really important to point out that our standards, with the exception of, as Ms. Thomas mentioned, the world geography and the changes in social studies with new standards, and our other content areas, the standards are the same as they have been the last 2 years in most of our content areas, but the way that they're being assessed is the primary difference. And so the depth of knowledge and really understanding, inferring, and extending content rather than simply giving information back is the move that the assessment is in.
And that's part of the whole change goal of having students have more critical thinking skills and be,
Absolutely.
because that's what they do in college, and so we want to get them prepared to learn that way.
Absolutely, and so just as another example, on math and science exams, there are more what we would call open-ended or constructed responses, where students don't have a selection of A, B, C, or D to choose from, but rather have to fill in a grid of what their answer is.
Okay, great. Y una pregunta para los estudiantes que no toman clases completamente en inglés, que están en el programa bilingüe. ¿Van a tomar la prueba en español, en inglés? ¿Cómo va a funcionar eso?
Para los niños en tercer, cuarto y quinto tienen la oportunidad de tomarlo en inglés o en español, dependiendo en el curso que están. Si están en el programa bilingüe, lo pueden tomar en español, o si ya están más listos en inglés, dependiendo de lo que determinen las maestras y la escuela. Pero recomendamos que si es necesario que los niños demuestren lo que saben de mejor manera, que lo tomen en español. So, sí tienen esa oportunidad.
Pero esa oportunidad no es para los estudiantes en secundaria y preparatoria, lo tienen que tomar en inglés.
En inglés, ajá. Pero este año el Estado ha dado adicionales oportunidades para ayudar a los estudiantes. Pueden usar un diccionario, pueden tomar un poquito más tiempo. Hay otras ayudas que tienen los estudiantes para que puedan enseñar y demostrar su inteligencia en el examen.
Y eso se determina en cada escuela dependiendo de las necesidades de aprendizaje de los estudiantes.
Sí, cada escuela tiene un comité que se enfoca en las necesidades de los niños que están aprendiendo inglés, y ellos tienen reuniones antes de las juntas y pueden asignar qué es lo que van a necesitar para tener éxito.
Okay. What happens if my kid misses the exam that day? How do I schedule a makeup test? Or will the school have scheduled makeup days? How does that work?
So it's very important that if possible that the children go to school on that day unless there's an emergency, but there will be a makeup day. They would need to contact their schools to find out when that makeup day is. Y en español, que es un tema importante, que es muy importante que los niños asistan a la escuela, al menos que haya alguna emergencia, pero sí tienen oportunidad de tomar el examen en otro día. So es importante que llamen a las escuelas a saber cuál es ese día que les va a tocar la segunda oportunidad.
Y hacemos hincapié en lo de la emergencia, o sea, que el niño esté enfermo o algo así, no que tenga una cita con el doctor o que... O sea, que realmente sea una emergencia, porque sí es importante que lo tomen con el resto de los estudiantes. Y es importante para el estudiante también, que no esté solo. Y
es importante para que los estudiantes, es la oportunidad de demostrar lo que ellos han aprendido a través del año. Entonces, como le digo, si es una emergencia y es necesario faltar, entonces sí, pero si no, deben de tratar de ir a la escuela ese día.
Hacer todo lo posible. Por supuesto. There was some doubt at the beginning, before we took the first set of exams, about the 15% for ninth grade. The state has said that 15%, that the results of the STAAR and of course exams would count for 15% of the students' grade, but then they defer that for a year, and the districts decided that they decided individually whether they were going to do that or not, and our district did. Our board of trustees decided to defer for a year. How is that going to work in the coming years, or how has that been an issue? How are we looking at that?
Yeah, we're not exactly sure how it's going to work in the coming years. The state for now is saying that they've deferred that 15% requirement for at least a year. However, in the state legislature, they will revisit whether that 15% will even be a factor in the state assessments. This is very important for people to understand, though, that that end of course exam, whether it counts 15% or not for the final grade, that end of course exam does count towards the student's graduation. So whether it determines some type of grade on their report card is irrelevant. What is most important for everyone to hear, and everyone to hear this clearly, is that that end of course will count towards the number of points that they need in order to graduate. And it counts for our first-time ninth graders and any of our eighth graders that are taking the end of course.
Okay. So definitely it's important that students do well, and they have opportunities to, in some grades they have the opportunity to take it again to improve their results, right?
Absolutely. Let's say the student does not do well on the end of course, and then we're asking them to retake it so that they can get a higher score. But in the graduation plans that our students will graduate under will also be impacted by the scores that they get. So in order to graduate with the recommended plan or on the distinguished plan, they will have to score at a certain level. So they may take the test and pass it, which is great. But if they want to graduate in a recommended plan or a distinguished plan, they can retake it to raise that score.
And how does that affect their college admission? I mean, why would students want to do better? Because they say, okay, I passed it, you know, it's great. But why would they want to take it again and do better? Is that going to enhance their chances of getting into college or the college that they want to get into?
Well, really, we do not encourage any of our students to look towards a minimum high school graduation plan, because that is not, by definition, considered college preparatory. So really our students should be working towards either the recommended or the distinguished plan, both of those having the requirement that Mr. Reyes was discussing about meeting certain levels of achievement on the Algebra 2 and the English 3 assessments, again linking to post-secondary readiness. And if I could just reiterate, because there's been a lot of confusion, and I think all of us want to reiterate the importance of those end-of-course exams, because there's been the 15% for the grade, then there was a discussion about will that be included in my GPA, and then suddenly when those two things for this particular year have been deferred or have been tabled, sometimes again students or their parents may misinterpret that it's not still linked to graduation requirements. So in the past, students only needed 4 assessments of tax exit level to graduate. They now need 12, and it includes these first exams that our students are taking. So it's always going to be critical that they take the end of course exams very seriously, because they do determine whether they graduate at all and then what level of graduation diploma they receive.
Así que el que no se vaya a usar el 15% para las calificaciones este año y otras cosas que se han dejado para el año que viene, no quiere decir que los exámenes de fin de curso no sean importantes.
Son muy importantes.
Y es muy importante porque la puntuación de cada examen se va a acumular y va a determinar qué plan de graduación van a tener los estudiantes.
Correcto. Y es importante también que cada año van a tomar otros exámenes. Si falté o no pasé los exámenes del año en grado 9, ahora en 10, es posible que tengo que tomar exámenes que tuve cursos de grado 9 y ahora los de grado 10. O sea, no queremos que alumnos tengan que tomar 8 exámenes en grado 10 porque algo no lo tomaron muy serio en grado 9.
Sí. Me imagino que los estudiantes tampoco quieren tomar los exámenes.
No, creo que no, es verdad.
That's a good point to reiterate, that if students aren't successful in this first round of tests and they have to retake it, they can retake it in the summer. But even if if they do not retake it or are not successful, that means their 10th grade year, they not only have to take their 10th grade test, but then they also have to retake the grade 9 test that they didn't do well on. So it's important that our students really focus on trying to be successful this first time around.
Great. And we do have those preparation sessions, so they can be successful. So that's great. I think we're good with the questions now. Those were excellent questions, and I would like to thank the panel for their thoughtful answers. And now I would like to ask Ms. Brown to talk to you about some of the resources that we have available for parents and students, and share some of the tips that can help parents support their children's success on the new test.
Thank you. We do have some resources we'd like to share with you. Dallas ISD has put together a web page that includes multiple STAAR resources for parents and students. The resources include videos, links to other websites, and calendar dates. The Teaching and Learning Department has compiled a list of tutorial videos for previously hard-to-master concepts. Students and parents can select a concept and watch a video that has been reviewed by the respective department. Also, the district has a web page that includes frequently asked STAAR questions. Questions from this forum will also be added to the list. Students can also look at practice questions that have been released by TEA. You can also find additional resources on TEA's website. Finally, Dallas ISD is offering a STAAR end-of-course prep session and other sessions for free. Here are some parent tips. Parents play a major role in ensuring that students are prepared for the test, and we wanted to give you some suggestions of things you could do at home so your child is successful. Add a few minutes of reading time to each day in the days, or ideally the weeks leading up to the test. Talk to your child's teacher to see if there are areas that need additional attention. Find out if the school is offering additional tutoring. Encourage your children by letting them know they will do well on the test. Make sure they have their uniform or clothes for the next day ready the night before the test, along with books and backpacks. Make sure your child goes to bed early the night before the test so he or she is well rested. Make sure that he or she eats a nutritious breakfast at home or at school on the day of the test. Get to school on time or a few minutes early to make sure your child is relaxed and ready to take the test. Children who are rested and well fed will have the ability to concentrate, which will increase their confidence and raise their chances of a successful completion of the exams.
Great, and I think it's important that parents know in Spanish que algunas de las recomendaciones que estamos haciendo, que los niños estén descansados, que se vayan a la cama temprano el día anterior, que tomen un desayuno nutritivo, y si no tienen tiempo de tomarlo en la casa, que lleguen con tiempo a la escuela para que lo puedan tomar ahí, que estén descansados, que relajados para que puedan tomar el examen. El leer es muy importante en los días y las semanas antes del examen. Así que hay muchas cosas que los padres nos pueden ayudar, y pueden ayudar a sus hijos para que tengan éxito. Así que pues esperamos que los que nos estén viendo pues hayan obtenido buenos consejos para ayudar a sus hijos. On behalf of everyone at the Dallas ISD and the panel of experts, I would like to thank everybody watching us for their questions and participation. This forum will be available on our webpage at www.dallasisd.org/STAAR. Este foro estará disponible en nuestra página de internet www.dallasisd.org/STAAR. Thank you again for your participation and have a good day. Gracias por su participación en el Dallas ISD STAAR Forum.